Welcome to the I Work For Him podcast. I'm Michael Miracle, producer of the I Work For Him radio program, the voice of the faith and work movement. Our mission is to transform the workplace of every Christian into a mission field. What does that look like in your workplace? Let's find out right now.
You've tuned into I Work For Him, the mouthpiece for the faith and work movement. We're your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg.
Listeners, you are in for a real treat today in the conversation we're going to have, and I just want to cue you up a little bit. Get ready to call the listener line at 866-713-9675. Someone is going to get a copy of the book we're talking about today, signed by the author and our guest today, James Barnett. And, I just want to say it's fun because it's really kind of a little bit of a trip down maybe your own childhood if you had the privilege of going on any road trips as a family, or you're thinking about it now. So the life lessons that can be learned along the way, we can learn from this book as well, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So 866-713-9675 to get a copy. One person gets a copy of that book signed by the author.
All right, so we're in part 2 of a conversation with James Barnett, the president of DaySpring, online at dayspring.com. We totally encourage you to check out DaySpring online. Talking about his book, Blue Skies, How to Live in Extraordinary Expectation of What's Around the Corner. And it's all about the story of his family and their adventures. But really what I loved about the book was how he took those experiences and translated them into leadership inspiration for himself as a leader over 41 years at DaySpring. Just a lot of fun. Get a copy of his book online at dayspring.com. James, I want to pick up. We closed the show last week talking about wall drug. That was kind of fun. You hadn't even gotten anywhere yet, but you're a planner. You love to mark out destinations and orchestrate wonder and awe in your kids and whoever else happens to be along the vacation. But as a parent and a leader, you really aren't in control, or as much control as you think about. Are you really? How did your son Jordan and your day at Daytona Beach teach you that lesson that you really aren't in control?
Well, in the book, I'd have 21 what I call look again concepts or learnings that I've learned through life, and one of those learnings is what I call the facade of control. And Jordan was just 3 years old at the time, and Abby was 9, Nick was 10, and we were at Daytona visiting some friends. And for those that you don't know, they drive on the beaches there with, there's 300 cars out there on the beach.
The Daytona 500 was first run on the beach.
Yes, that's right, on the beach. And so we were out there, and we were some friends, and basically the parking lot, we'd parked and gone to lunch, and we came back, and my friend and I were farther ahead, closer to the beach, and Jordan saw us up there and started running. There was a car coming at a very, very high speed, and my friend turned around, just happened to look back and saw Jordan coming. My wife and I didn't see it. We weren't paying attention, and he saw Jordan, and he yelled as loud as he could, Jordan, stop, at the loudest of his voice. And only God knows, right? God has a plan. It's not mine. Jordan stopped on a dime, and this car missed him by a foot or two. I mean, it was just, he stopped, and my wife happened to turn. I happened to turn and see this, and it was one of those experiences that, first of all, you just freeze. You're almost, did that really happen? Did that really just happen? And it was one of those that just shook, and our other 2 kids saw it, and we're just like, wow, just how close that was. And the rest of the day, I think we were all in a little bit of a daze. Jordan just went on, and everything was fine. He didn't think much about it. He's 3. He was just, I'm fine. I stopped, and things are fine. But I remember, looking back on that, during that trip, we continued on, and it was just that God, you know what? You have a plan, and it's not mine. And this thing of what we think we have control of, we don't have control at all. Our job is obedience. Our job is to look for Him and His plan. And then, I call it to watch and listen and then obey to what He's up to. So that was really a lesson that marked me about, we're not in control. We don't get to choose. And the reality is, let's face it, I write about blue skies, and I write about, God is up to something extraordinary all the time. But life isn't easy. There are challenges. There are problems. There are things we don't understand. I have had, my wife and I, we've had plenty of hardships and plenty of struggles. When you think,
but never a shortage of greeting cards.
Never a shortage of greeting cards. But that was the other part of my journey, was this issue of I've asked why, God, so much, so many times, but it was in my 30s when I began to look back at my life about this, am I driven, am I called? I was really struggling with, but Lord, I don't understand. And I really discovered I was asking the wrong question.
We're going to cover that later.
Okay.
I want you to save that.
All right, I'll save that one.
But I love this next conversation I want to have with you, because I think it really plays into a lot of that as well. When you would travel with your parents, prayer was a part of the plan.
Yes.
It was on the agenda,
Yes.
as per what you were saying, earlier. Right. So your parents prayed over car troubles and different things that were going on the trip, and they understood that God cared about those very intimate details of life. How did that impact you and your family? How's that played a part in what you've done with your adventures and in your leadership at DaySpring?
Well, I think my parents, prayer was just part of life. It was just like having dinner. It was just like changing clothes. There was nothing unique about that we're just going to pray on Sunday, or it was this thing. It was just part of our life. So, we prayed at our meals. We prayed for favor. We prayed for help. We prayed for God to bless our trip, and my dad would always read Psalm 121 when we would leave, right before we'd leave and pull out of the driveway. He'd read that over us and really, for his protection and covering as we travel. And so that was really, a part of who we were. So I didn't think and never question it, but it was always, and I saw God, and I talk about that in my book, of one of the experiences when I was 4, that we ran out of, the radiator ran out of water, and we were stuck in the middle of a desert in the middle of the night. And at those times, it was all 2-lane roads in Arizona, New Mexico, and no one else was coming. And so I just remember my dad praying, and for some way, shape, or form, in the middle of the desert, he looked off, and the moon was reflected on some water. And he was able to go over there, and I guess we were carrying some gallon jugs with us or something, and he got some water and brought it back and put it in the radiator, and we were off.
Wow.
But we were probably out there, my sister said, 2 or 3 hours trying to think, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And it was just, we believe that was through prayer we received what God had for us. But that was a normal way of life, that God is at work, and our job is to pray and to seek Him.
And your dad taught you that God wanted to be involved in the intimate details of life.
Yes.
And as a leader here at DaySpring, that kind of insight is powerful, because you don't have to make decisions on anything. God wants to be involved in all your decisions.
In all the decisions. Today, we're praying over a number of issues at the business, of things that are going on, and we do that all the time. With my leadership team this morning, God is at work. Our job is to pray and to listen. And as a leader, the biggest thing you got to really know is that you're not in charge. You think you're in charge. And yes, you have responsibilities, you have roles, you have leadership roles. But the reality is to really pray, God, what are you up to? And how do we go about doing that?
You're listening to I Work For Him as we talk with James Barnett, president of DaySpring, online, dayspring.com, about his brand new book, Blue Skies. We'll be right back with more in I Work For Him. Hang on.
You know the kind of person that always tells you about the latest trends or the special deals around town? Well, lean in, because here's a message from that kind of person. The Awaken Podcast Network is the place to be. Go to awakenpodcastnetwork.com and unlock God's purpose for your work with help from some friends. You will find a gathering place of podcasts that provide simple tools, faith stories, and conversations that will inspire and equip you to vibrantly live out your faith in your work today. Go ahead, check out awakenpodcastnetwork.com and then be that kind of person and tell a friend.
Welcome back to I Work For Him as we talk on location at dayspring.com with the president, James Barnett. James, you've been at DaySpring now 41 years, which is an amazing career. In today's world, that's an amazing thing. You started as a marketing intern, where you practically begged, borrowed, and stealed your way into being a marketing intern. Was there ever a time where you thought you were done? Where, you just thought, maybe I'm done here at DaySpring? Was there ever a time you thought, I'm gone?
Many times, especially probably in that first 15 or 20 years. There are times you're saying, Lord, is this it? Is this my time? And there are times when someone's recruiting you, or you're looking at those opportunities. And you know what? Every time, there was a couple of times I almost moved on. I mean, there was one time I really wanted to move on because I thought it I was going to get paid 3 times what I was making. I was going to move to a big, nice, beautiful city, and I was really excited about some new adventure. And I've been here about 10, 12 years at that time. And I remember taking about a couple hours one afternoon and getting away and just praying and asking the Lord, just as my dad had taught me, and just normal, Lord, what do you think about this? And I'd been through this conference at this point. I'd been this, are you driven or are you called? Mm-hmm. And so I was trying to figure this out. It was about 3 years. I think I was 33 or 34. So it was 3 or 4 years following this. And so I was asking a different set of questions. And so as I did that, I began to say, Lord, I heard the Lord ask me, are you willing to serve me another year here if I ask you to? And I said, well, sure, Lord, I'll be glad to do that. And then I heard him say, well, if I ask you to do this another 10 years, would you do it? And I thought, well, Lord, yeah, I would. And then I remember him saying, if I ask you to do this for the rest of your life, would you do this? And I remember just crying before the Lord, saying, Lord, I'm not thinking that far down the road. I'm not, thinking about the rest of my life here. I'm just trying to make this decision. But I remember the Lord just saying, you know what? Now is not the time. I just want you to be obedient to the next step. And so I decided to stay. And I've had a few more of that, but that was the most, I remember just the clarity that I heard from the Lord. He didn't speak audibly, but I remember him just asking me those questions in my spirit as I prayed and was looking for scriptures to say, okay, Lord, what are you doing? And so for me, it's not been probably the last 20 years, it's not been striving. It's not been trying to see what else. It's, Lord, what are you up to? And how do I do what you've called me to do?
Well, and to that point, you start every day with a simple prayer.
Yes.
What is that prayer, and how has that played along with that same leadership decision?
Well, 20-some years ago, I started this little prayer in the morning, and again, it was after all these learnings and all these what I call look again, moments, and these little phrases that have helped me. Is I began to pray this prayer, that Lord, you have a plan today, and it's not mine. I've got a lot planned today, Lord, but you can move anything on my calendar. Help me to watch and listen and then obey. And I pray that most mornings before I even get out of bed, when I wake up, because you know what? It's that issue of my flesh wants to be in control. Mm-hmm. I want to be in charge. This, and it sets my day for God. Today, you have a plan, and it's not mine. And so I want to be obedient to what you do. But the truth is, if I'm not paying attention, if I don't get my mind set before I almost get out of bed, and that even helps me as I get up and get my coffee and get my time with some quiet time and devotion and scripture, that sets my mind on, okay, God, today is about you. It's not about me. And that prayer, it's simple. It's not hard. It's easy to learn, but it's been really powerful in my life to keep focus and to really just rest into what God has. Now, does that mean that I'm not busy and I don't have meetings and I don't have deadlines and don't have sales objectives and new products and new things to do and meetings? No, you have all of those. But what really helped me is, Jesus' life, Jesus got up, it says, every morning, and he spent time with the Father.
Right.
Every morning. But then what does it say? And then he went about doing the Father's business.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He went about doing what the Father, he was following what God, even as Jesus himself said, I only came to do the work of the Father.
Right.
And he spent his day doing the work of the Father. And so that has been, a good model for me to just say, okay, Lord, help me to get my heart focused on you, get time with you in the morning, and then go about the day. But it's your day, and you can move anything on my calendar.
Let's get back to some of your road trips.
Yeah, so I wanted to hear about, I love the way that God created each one of us unique. And one of the things that is very strong in you is your desire, that love that you have for other people experiencing things for the first time and seeing the awe that comes with that. And so that actually led you on your road trips to start to invite other people to join. You probably wanted more of that,
maybe
right?
I jumped on your bandwagon after you're invited, but yeah.
I know.
So what happened?
Well, when we would come back from these trips, my brother-in-law, and he was a really good planner too. He did a lot of the planning, and my sister and her two daughters, and then our kids. We would tell people about these trips. We were we would have our family gatherings. And again, being the youngest of 7, and then with all the family members, there'd be 30 or 40 or 50 of us at family, get-togethers.
Staggering.
So we would tell about these trips. Well, others wanted to say, well, can we join? I said, yeah, meet us at Yosemite on, this date. We're headed out there. We're going to go there and get going. And so we started planning these trips and bringing other people along. And what was fun and exciting is, again, as we all began to have kids and get those big groups, we would go. One trip, we were up in Minnesota, and there were 22 of us on this trip. And a friend of ours had a house on Lake Superior. And so we piled in there and we worked out from there. But experiencing things for the first time with these kids, when you can, do certain waterfalls or get out on the ocean or get out on the Lake Superior, which feels like an ocean.
Yes.
And you get out there on some of those.
Ocean.
That's right. and get out. But see, there was a national park there, Isle Royale. It's one of the ones out in the middle of the ocean. It's one of the least visited in the country because it's hard to get to. It's about a 3-hour ride on a boat out there. But we had to get that on off our list, right? We had to do that. But there were just so many experiences, and when you see that happens the first time, and that's really it comes back to that look again, is God is always doing new things, and He's always, full of adventure. The Lord is, I believe, full of adventure, that He's created good things for us to do and enjoyment for us to have, and seeing people experience those things for the first time just gives me great joy, because that's with the Lord, when I experience things for the first time, just the awe of what God is doing, and that, it's like, I feel like I'm sitting in the grandstands a lot of times watching the game take place. And then I look, God, you're unbelievable. You're amazing at what you do and how you go about doing that. And you never do it the same. Even the parables, you think about it, and then you can look at this in business. God just didn't do things the same way. He did it different ways, so we couldn't have a formula. It wasn't a formula that God had. It was, hey, he's owns not only the cattle on 1,000 hills, he's got 1,000 ideas and 10,000 ideas and ways to do things.
I love that. We're talking today with James Barnett, who wrote a brand new book, Blue Skies, really just capturing all of the adventures in James and Marilyn's life as they took their kids and family members and other friends on trips with them. We'll be right back with more in our conversation. You're listening to I Work for Him. Make sure you check out dayspring.com, but if you want to get a free copy of the book, Martha?
Yeah, just call our listener line at 866-713-9675, and you could be that lucky winner.
We'll be right back with more on I Work for Him.
Want to build a profitable side hustle that impacts people with truth and healing in themselves and their leadership? Then look at becoming a certified leadership coach with Giant. Giant has been in the leadership space for over 13 years and has over 500 coaches in over 127 countries. Their coaches are being hired by Fortune 500 companies and organizations like I Work for Him. Jim and I took the Giant Sherpa training under one of these great coaches to become leaders worth following. Giant gives you everything you need to start your own coaching business from scratch, like hands-on training from top-level coaches, access to an all-in-one online platform to run your entire coaching business, and you get to join a thriving community of coaches around the world. To get started, Giant is hosting a coaching business workshop to help you learn how to build a successful coaching business. This workshop is 100% free, and you can reserve your spot by going to giant.tv/I Work for Him. If you're ready to impact people and get paid to do it, go to giant.tv/I Work for Him. That's giant.tv/I Work for Him.
Hey, welcome back to I Work for Him. As we're on location at DaySpring in Siloam Springs, Arkansas, dayspring.com, where you can get a copy of this brand new book by the president of DaySpring, Blue Skies. Call the listener line.
866-713-9675. We'll be giving away one copy of the book signed by James Barnett, but you can go to dayspring.com and buy them for everybody in your family. What a great gift.
So many great lessons in here. James, I really wanted to hit this because this is what hit me the hardest in your book was your story of your friend David. He died of cancer in his 30s. You and Marilyn and your friends wrestled with this on a trip after his passing. You quoted your friend Dean in the book. I'm not going to let the things I don't understand about God determine what I do know about God. What do you mean?
Well, during that time, Dean Kearns was one of our founders, and he was one of my very great friends. And his wife, Ruth was my wife's best friend. And then we had friends David and Amy Brooker. Ruth had gotten cancer and passed away after 4 years in September of 92. And David had gotten cancer that year and passed away in February of 93. And during that following year, we were really wrestling. We had prayed over these people. We had walked around the houses. We had done, a lot of those things we do to pray because we know God answers prayer. Mm-hmm. And yet the Lord chose to take both of them home. And during that next year, Dean and I were talking one evening, and I said, Dean, I was asking why. Why does God do this? And I was in my 30s and trying to understand, and I remember Dean making this comment. He said, James, I don't understand why, but I'm not going to let what I don't understand about God determine what I do know and understand about God. And he said, thinking about a pie. He said, if there's a slice of that pie gone, I don't understand it. I still have the rest of the pie. And I want to really make sure that I've seen God do miracles. I've seen God answer prayer. Yes, wait, maybe. But getting that perspective, that really was one of those perspective times about, you know what? I have seen God do miraculous things. I have seen God, answer those prayers in the yes form of what I would like for those to look like. And then there's times when God doesn't, and it looks differently. But that God is still who he says he is. He's still good. He has still got a plan. There's nothing that interrupted his plan. He's right on time, right on plan. And that phrase, that line really helped me through my time with David. And Amy's still one of our very best friends 30 years later. And we're just seeing God at work every day.
Well, and what I pulled out of it was you learned to stop asking why and to start asking what. Yes. What am I supposed to learn from this God? Yeah.
Well, I think that was one of the big pivot points for me is as I began to, ask why God, why does this happen? Following that conference, there was a time when I began to think, I'm really focused on me. The why question really focuses on me. But the what question really focuses on God and gets my head up and gets me looking out to what are you up to, God? What are you up to, God? Because the reality is my plan doesn't matter.
And your understanding is limited.
I understand is limited. So as I began to look out and say, what are you doing, God? I began to live with a little bit more anticipation. Right. The subtitle of the book, the excited anticipation or expectation of what God is up to is what's around that corner. And learning to live that way helped me get that perspective and to keep out, it's not my plan, it's God's plan. And that was a big pivot point. And I talk about that, we have to stop, look, and listen.
Right.
And it's so easy to get caught up in the looking down and not looking, stopping and asking those right questions and looking in the right places and listening for those right voices.
So many great lessons. I love the fact that on your road trips, you and Marilyn were really instilling a sense of adventure in your kids and other kids too. But your boys, Nick and Jason, really loved the adventure. You were sharing with us even earlier, the competition of running down the hill the fastest or jumping off a cliff. I'm not sure what all you were doing, but I know we've done a little bit of that in Minnesota as well. But one of your trips to Lutsen, Minnesota, you said to yourself...
Where we went on our honeymoon.
Where we did go on our honeymoon. Wow. So you said to yourself in your book, this quote, "Helping others see what they can't see in themselves is one of my greatest joys in life." How did you do that for your boys, Nick and Jason? And then how do you do that for the family here at DaySpring?
Well, there's something in us. God has wired us he's given us gifts and talents, and he's wired us to love him and enjoy him forever, right? Mm-hmm. But there's nothing better than seeing people experience things for the first time and to see them succeed. And, that just this last week, I've got my son, Nick, has got two twin boys that are 8 years old, and they're both playing baseball. But one of those boys is, not quite as confident as the other one. But he's got the talent. It's there, that he's got it inside. But I've been working with him, just taking him out to the ballpark by himself, and we've been working on his hitting. And to see him finally hit that ball a certain way or do what he's trying to do and believing in him just changes his perspective and how he feels about himself. And on those trips when we were jumping off cliffs and we were, out in the swimming in a little bit in the lake just to see if you could jump in at 36 degrees and see if you're going to freeze to death or not. and all the things that we were testing and trying and doing for the first time. Not everybody does it the same. Not everybody wants to do that, but there is an amazing thing to see the joy, especially in a kid's life, right? A kid that sees that joy, but an adult that doesn't believe, because those negative voices that we hear so often, we listen to those voices and we don't listen to that voice of the Holy Spirit to say, I'm enough, I'm His, I can do this, and helps me push through. And seeing that happen in someone's life just gives me joy.
I think like we experienced your Monday morning jumpstart, your devotion time with your staff this morning. And I'm thinking about that just in perspective of this, because like the theme was, I am special, and understanding that each person is special and God has created each one, and instilling those values over and over again within your own people that you have influence over, and the difference that can make. I see that connection there, and that's so amazing.
This show would be incomplete if we didn't honor your parents at least one more time. What I love the fact is that for their 60th wedding anniversary, that went on one more adventure with you and your family to Yosemite. Talk about that impact. They were so surprised that you had invited family from all over the country and you met them at the airport. But talk about the impact that your mom and dad had on your family, your legacy, really your leadership here at DaySpring.
Well, that was a trip I planned for probably a year. I told my siblings we need to do one great trip. They'd never been to Yosemite, and we had gone out there and seen that, and so we were excited about that. So I have a cousin that lives in Sacramento, so we planned to take him out there, and so we all the siblings flew in, and cousins, and about 20 of us again, and had a couple of vans, and we all packed up and surprised them, and Mom and Dad were 78 and 81 at the time, but they were still just as adventurous. They were still excited. And by the way, at Lutsen, they were in their 70s, and they rode those little
Alpine
slide down at
Lutsen Mountain
in the 70s. And Mom was real conservative. She was real slow, but she got on. And that was true at Yosemite. They were still engaged and still exciting. And they were always invested in other people. That was the other thing I'd take away from my parents. And they were married 74 years in 3 months before my dad passed, and Mom passed a few years later. But they were always instilling, belief and excitement of life, and never, just never gave up. Their persistence, their perseverance, their joy it was something bigger. They were always invested in others, and it was such a fun trip to be able to invest in them and to just honor them and have the excitement of them being together with their family, which they loved the most, and being with family and friends. And our family was an extended family. They had a lot of other kids that would show up. So, our Christmases and Thanksgivings and all the special times were always a lot of folks there. And they had a big garden, so they were always feeding us all the vegetables in the garden and those kind of things.
It's too bad you couldn't have just brought along the old Buick for that.
I know.
That would have been, just think of the smell. There you go.
That's awesome.
Right.
So one quick question. Why the title Blue Skies? Tell us how that fits with all that we've been hearing today.
Well, when I was 25, I was going to New York for my second time, my wife's first time. I wanted to take her again, back to that experience. I'd gone up there for a trade show, and I was going back for the second year. And we had 2 kids at the time, and my wife grew up in Wyoming. So we decided to drop them off in Wyoming at the grandparents and fly to Denver. So it's in May the 21st, 22nd, and it's 75 degrees. We drive from Cheyenne down to Denver, spend the night at a hotel right there next to the airport, getting ready to go the next morning. I wake up the next morning, and I go out to get stuff in the car at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's snowing like crazy. I mean, there's 8 inches of snow on the ground. And the long story short, we spent almost 5 hours getting to the airport a mile away. And we had to dig the car out. And
a mile away.
Wow.
We were
5 hours.
5 hours before we got there. It was snowing. It snowed the entire day. We finally got on the airplane at 5:30 in the afternoon. We were supposed to leave at 8 o'clock that morning. The flight was leaving at 8 o'clock. And I was supposed to be at this trade show to set up that day because it was opening the next day. And it was one of those really frustrating days. I mean, digging out, trying to get stuff, trying to get to the airport, delayed flights, couldn't see anything. It was just blinding snow. And So finally get to the plane, get on, and we take off about 5:30 in the afternoon. And I remember this just as vividly as yesterday. You know how you do when you're flying in clouds, still snowing, can't see a thing. And we get up to about 10 or 15,000 feet, and we pop out of those clouds. And it is the most brilliant blue sky I have ever seen. And it was just, you could see forever. And just in that moment, I remember saying, God, we've had all these problems today for the last 12 hours. There was blue skies all the time. There was blue skies. God, you're always there. There's blue skies all the time and sunshine, but the clouds of life, we lose perspective. We lose perspective. And my, purpose, for really writing this book is to help people see God, to look again, to get his perspective. Because when we can do that, then we can live with that excited anticipation of what God is up to next. Then we can live with that excited times of, life, and God is at work all the time, and that when we see him at work, but if we don't get that right perspective, then we look at ourselves. We start looking and we start asking why God versus what are you doing?
James Barnett, thank you so much for being on I Work for Him today.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Blue skies, how to live in extraordinary expectation of what's next around the corner. What's around the corner? By James Barnett, President of DaySpring, dayspring.com. Martha, great conversation.
Loved it.
Yeah. You've been listening to I Work for Him with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg. We're Christ followers. Our workplace, it's our mission field, but ultimately,
I work for him.
Did you know that God has a calling on your life? It's true. He's called you to bring Jesus to the world. For some, that may look like a pulpit or a foreign mission field, but for most of us, it looks like a construction site, a cubicle, a hospital, or a classroom. Wherever it is that you work, live, volunteer, and invest, that is your mission field. To learn more about integrating your faith into your work and retirement, check out our books, I Work for Him, She Works for Him, and I Retire for Him, by going to iworkforhim.com/bookstore.
Thank you for listening to the I Work for Him podcast with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg. Please visit iworkforhim.com to learn more about connecting your faith and work, to join the I Work for Him Nation, or subscribe to our weekly blog. You can also follow us on social media at I Work for Him to stay up to date and meet our guests. If today's message spoke to you, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. Your review will launch more workplace missionaries across America. That's at I Work for Him and online, iworkforhim.com. I work the number 4him.com.